hello viewers. Um, Today we have veteran parliamentarian, senior Congress leader, Mr. B.K. Hariprasad, who is a four-time Rajya Sabha member, and right now he is the member of Legislative Council, Karnataka. Um, and Mr. B.K. Hariprasad is one of the senior most social justice face of Indian National Congress. As far as his politics is concerned, he has a strong Dravidian core, and his political core revolves around non-Brahmin movement, social justice, and federalism. In a nutshell, the Congress Party, he embodies the exact ideology that the Congress Party needs to carry forward in the coming years. So it is very important that we interact with someone like him. So we'll go to the interview. And as far as Mr. B.K. Hariprasad is concerned, for the first time, he was nominated to Rajya Sabha in the year 1990 by Sri Rajiv Gandhi. And in 2004, he was nominated by Madam Sonia Gandhi. And in 2014, it was by Rahul Gandhi. So his long illustrious political career, it spans over the generations of Congress leadership. In fact, his political acumen was identified by Madam Indira Gandhi. She was the person who gave him the seat to contest in Karnataka State Assembly election. So none better than Mr. B.K. Hariprasad to talk about the evolution of Indian politics. So we'll go into the interview. So very welcome, sir. Very welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, before coming into the interview, I chanced upon, I happened, it was my privilege to see your farewell speech in Rajya Sabha on 23rd March 2020, this year, 3 months ago. It was a short speech, but it was a very emotional speech. You mentioned that as a politician, you have no regrets in public life, that you are very proud that you stood up for your party's ideology, socialist, democratic, and secular ideals of Congress Party. I could see that a proud man, the pride in your eyes, a man with clear conscience, who was a satisfied person, who was happy about his political journey. So when you look back at the last 20 years as a parliamentarian, what do you make out of it, sir? How do you feel about it?
Well, it was a great opportunity to serve the nation through the party and the parliament. I had opportunity of serving the entire nation through the party in various capacities. As a member of parliament for almost 19 years, I could take up some of the serious issues in the parliament so that I could respond to the aspirations of the people of this country, especially the southern part of the country and northeastern part of the country.
Yes. Sir, as since like I mentioned, you have a strong Dravidian core in you, the social justice core in you. So someone as a senior most social justice stalwart, how do you look at a Dravidian icon, social justice stalwart of Tamil Nadu, the senior most Dravidian leader, Dr. Kalaignar, and the Dravidian movement and our social justice struggle? What do you make of it, sir? What is your evaluation about our Dravidian movement?
Well, I'm proud to say that I am a Dravidian. My forefathers are from Mangalore, which was the part of Madras Presidency.
Okay.
So I am a Dravidian.
Okay.
I am immensely impressed and influenced by the thoughts of Periyar and Annadurai and Kalaignar and Kamaraj, who thought that human beings should live a dignified life. Even in the UN Charter, it says that every human being should have a decent living and decent employment. This is the core ideology of mine, and especially Dr. Kalaignar fought for this social justice and equality right through 60s, and is the veteran legendary face of the social justice in the country. In the recent past, we have not seen any man apart from Devaraja Aras. I don't think so there's anybody who's a legendary, you can say, who fought for the social justice and who fought for the human dignity. That is most important in this country. The country which is divided on the caste basis, and caste itself is a violation of the human rights. So it is the Kalaignar who gave a message to the countrymen that all are equal. That's where I salute Dr. Kalaignar for sending this strong message to this country.
Right. That was a wonderful introduction about your views on Dravidian movement and Dr. Kalaignar, sir. Although you belong to a nationalist movement, it felt as though I'm interacting with a Dravidian stalwart, someone from Dravidian movement. That's how I felt.
You should understand that this country has got three races. One is Aryan races in the northern part of the country. Other one is a Mongolian races in the northeastern country. And we Dravidians are from the southern part of the country. The three races dominate this beautiful country.
Right. Sir, moving on from Tamil Nadu social justice struggle that was spearheaded by Thandai Periyar, Arinyar Anna, and Dr. Kalaignar by Dravidian movement. Can we move on to Karnataka? Can you please give us a brief account of non-Brahmin movement in Karnataka? What happened in Karnataka, sir? Can you please tell us the social justice evolution of Karnataka?
Social justice evolution has taken place in Karnataka way back in 12th century by a greatest saint Basavanna, who preached equality in 12th century. He had Basava Mantapa, Anubhava Mantapa in Basava Kalyana, where he had called it was a parliament of at that point of time, where he preached equality, and he in the name of Shiva, he preached equality, that in the eyes of God all are equal. Though he is not a propagator of Dravidian movement, but he strongly recommended that all human beings are equal. That's how it started. Then from Nalvadi Krishnaraj Odayar, way back in 1879, he gave reservation to the scheduled caste. Later, Devraj Aras, the former chief minister of Karnataka, who brought in this Havnur commission for backward classes, and he gave 52% reservation for the backward classes. Later, it came down to 48%.
Okay. Sir, as someone, a senior-most politician who you would have traveled extensively all over India and even all over the world for that matter, you would have traveled to the length and breadth of India. Sir, personally, when we interact with our North Indian counterparts, when I interact with North Indian youngsters, I can see that divide. They're not able to relate with the social justice politics of the South. So if it is that's the case for us, then I'm sure even you would have experienced things like that. How is it, sir? Even in Parliament or in your level, when you interact with the Southern core, the social justice core, or the North Indian politicians or the North Indian core, can they relate with us? Can they relate with our aspirations?
Well, you see, one advantage what we had in the southern part of the country, we had tremendous social reformers. Periyar Ramaswamy Naikar in Tamil Nadu, Guru Narayanan in Kerala, Basavanna in Karnataka, Vemana in Andhra, Sahu Maharaj, Mahatma Phule, Jyotiba Phule, Savitribai Phule, Ambedkar. They were the stalwarts who brought in the social justice movement in the southern part of the country. But it could not catch up in the northern India, because it is a kind of feudal society which they are living in. The caste system is so in deep, and normally they don't accept so easily the natural justice or the social justice. We had the advantage of the social reformers, whereas the so-called Aryan belt or Hindi belt, there were no social reformers. That's the biggest drawback. That's how the awareness program is not there in the northern India. Except Mayawati ji and Kanshiram, they tried their best in the northern part of the country. Then the Mandal Commission, Mandal leaders like Lalu Prasad Yadav ji, Mulayam Singh Yadav ji, they tried their best, and they could establish their power in these states, but they could not succeed socially. That is the problem there.
Right. Sir, another peculiar thing about North India is that OBCs, other backward classes, despite constituting an overwhelming majority, even in North India and across the country, almost we constitute more than 55 to 60% of the population. Why is that there is no OBC consciousness among people, and why is that it is very easy to play scapegoat, to play OBCs as scapegoat, and why OBCs are very grossly underrepresented across domains, sir? For example, I came across this stat that says 89 posts, secretary level posts in Prime Minister Modi government, not even one single OBC is holding it.
No, basically, I can say Bharatiya Janata Party has got a crocodile tears for the OBCs. It's a lip sympathy. They may
Right.
be having a OBC chief ministers, but they
Right.
are anti-social justice. They are
Right.
like a neo Brahmins. They don't
Right.
believe in change. They believe in status quo. And most
Right.
of these BJP people, especially the mother organization of BJP RSS, they are status quo. They doesn't want to change the society. That's the
Right.
biggest problem. And as for the northern part of the country is concerned, as I
Mm, mm,
said, minds are so conditioned that they
mm.
are the status quo is they doesn't want to change. And the OBCs, the awareness problem is there. Though Mulayam Singh Yadavji and Lalu Prasad Yadavji brought in this social justice movement, but they confined to the caste. That's where there was a setback for the social justice movement.
Okay, okay. And my question is, why is it very difficult? Why is it very easy for the central government to take away OBC rights as opposed to they are not able to touch, for example, scheduled caste reservation rights. At least scheduled caste, the group has a better consciousness, but it is very easy to take away OBC rights. Why is it so easy, sir?
You see, the awareness among the scheduled caste is better as far as the reservations are concerned. But as far as the OBCs are concerned, their awareness as far as the reservation is concerned, I will say it is zero. And if you take the statistics, one statistics I would like to say here, in the nationalized banks, there are about 36 general managers. Out of that, 403 people belongs to the upper caste. Only 11 OBCs, some 7 SCs, only one minority, and hardly any STs, about 4 STs. Likewise, totally they have ignored and they have bypassed the policy of the reservation. And if you take the top bureaucracy, it is dominated by the upper caste. They don't give any chance for the OBCs. And they have forgotten that the constitution provides the opportunity for equal opportunity, and they just negate the entire spirit of constitution.
Okay, okay. That was an important point, sir. Sir, in North India, why is that only as far as OBC aspirations is concerned? As far as I see, it's my personal opinion. When we see there is only one reliable leader, Lalu Prasad Yadav, who has always been consistent to voice for OBCs. But as far as other leaders, they have not been so consistent. How do you place Indian National Congress in this journey of OBCs, sir? For example, even when Mandal reforms were brought in, even Indian National Congress was against it. How do you justify that stance, sir? Because your leader, Rajiv Gandhi, he even goes to the extent of talking against Mandal reforms in the open Lok Sabha. Why did that happen, sir?
Well, you see, after Dr. Kalenjar, who was very consistent in social justice, it is one and the only Lalu Prasad ji who has not compromised with the BJP.
Absolutely.
Was not compromised with the RSS. Yes. For the sake of power, he could have compromised with BJP or RSS. Absolutely. Because he fought vehemently against the RSS in 2015 when Mohan Bhagat spoke against the reservation. It was Lalu Prasad alone who fought, and he has to pay a high price. And the clan of this so-called BJP forced whatever it is in the jail. And it's very sad part. As far as Rajiv Gandhi is concerned, you know, the people who were around Rajiv Gandhi, later they joined BJP. They were responsible for misleading Rajiv Gandhi. After he realized that Mandal Commission has to be implemented, but it took time, but it was too late. We implemented Mandal Commission report.
Right. Can we say that if Mandal reforms had been implemented during Rajiv's period, the entire course of history, the entire history of Congress would have been different, sir? Can we say that?
Well, you see, Congress party, the history of India is Congress party's history. It is the congregation of all sections of the people. The dominant class were there, minorities were there, scheduled castes were there, OBCs were there, but OBCs' voices were not heard. And it took little over a period of almost 60-65 years for the central government to listen to the OBCs, because it was dominated by the upper caste. Slowly, the time it takes time to reform a progressive laws. If at all, if you want to implement progressive laws, it takes time. Overnight you can't implement. We have to convince the people, and then only we can implement, because some of the vested interests were there in the Congress party who were stalling this this Mandal Commission. But as I'm closely associated with Rajiv Gandhi, I know him, his feelings. Even the Rahul Gandhi, they were not against the reservation, and even Rajiv Gandhi was not against the Mandal Commission, because I don't want to name the leader who was from your own state, they were all behind Rajiv Gandhi to oppose this Mandal Commission. I'm sorry to say this.
Okay. Sir, as far as this position is concerned, you rightly mentioned that some leaders inside Congress, they were RSS supplants, they were misleading Rajiv Gandhi. And there is a general opinion that when Madam Sonia took over the reins, that is when this RSS lobby, soft RSS lobbyists inside Congress, they started to decline. How true is that, sir? How Madam Sonia
Gandhi? Because Sonia Gandhi ji, because I worked intensively with her for almost 12 years. I was in the working committee. I've seen her functioning. She is very much concerned with the depressed classes, deprived classes, oppressed classes, and the weaker section and the women. And she was very firm in that. There was no compromise as far as these weaker sections are concerned, irrespective of the caste, creed, or religion. She wanted that weaker section should be empowered. That's how the status quo is in the party. They had to leave the Congress party or try to sabotage the Congress party. That we have witnessed.
Was your high command receptive towards the aspirations that leaders like you, social justice stalwarts like you represented, sir? Did that happen? Were you
Well, I was a member of parliament in '93 when we implemented the Mandal Commission under the leadership of Sitaram Kesri ji. When we brought in 27% reservation for the post-graduation in the HRD, it was Arjun Singh ji was there. I was the member there in the parliament. So with the consent of Sonia Gandhi ji, we have given ample of opportunity for the weaker sections to come up, and we tried our best to empower them. And Sonia ji was solely responsible for the 27% reservation in the post-graduation. Let me tell you, the bill was introduced without OBCs. It was only for SC and ST. Then after we brought it to the notice of Sonia Gandhi ji, she included the OBC also. That's how we get the 27%, where NEET, this HRD minister has denied reservation in the NEET this time.
Right. Yes. Sir, you rightly came to that point about NEET, the denial of reservation in NEET, sir. Sir, what are your views on recent developments where Modi government has gone to the extent of denying reservation, OBC reservation in NEET PG admissions, and even Madam Sonia Gandhi has written a letter. And even the problem in this country right now is, it is not that the government, even more than the government, even the court, which is the ultimate guardian of fundamental rights, the court has gone to the extent of saying that reservation is not a fundamental right. What do you think of it, sir?
That's a very unfortunate part, because Supreme Court is not represented by OBCs or SCs. Hardly you find SC minorities or the OBCs. Naturally, the people who are sitting there, they doesn't know the pain of the oppressed classes. And let me tell you, the majority of the leaders who claims that they are the OBCs, they were used as mercenaries by these RSS and BJP. The OBCs are the mercenaries under RSS and BJP. That's how they are keeping mum. Because I know to get a constitutional status for NCBC, how we fought. One, my friend from Tamil Nadu, Mr. Karunanidhi, who heads some of the organization, he was in constant touch with me. How we fought, they know that. Because they are anti-reservationists.
Mm-hmm. That remark about OBCs being mercenaries, strong but very accurate, very accurate. Sir, as far as this NEET fiasco is concerned, you can see the strong anti-NEET mindset in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu recognizes that NEET itself is against social justice, very, very core of the constitutional rights of. students and SCs and STs, the non-Brahmins in general.
You know, it is a ridiculous argument. And you know, we know as a southern part, South Indians, majority of the medical colleges and engineering colleges, they admit students by taking huge capitation fees. Though it is banned by the Supreme Court, clandestinely they take capitation fees, admit people with 50% bare minimum percentage. But people who have no educational background, who have achieved 65-70%, they have been denied because they are poor. The policy of the people who are there in the helm of affairs, they are anti-poor. And as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, I don't know why people are opposing NEET. But as a member from Karnataka, whatever the NEET, because we brought in this CET, the Central Examination Test, we brought in Karnataka way back in '94, and almost all the people get the opportunity to study. And the people, as I said, the status quoist in the central government, they doesn't want the poor people or the depressed classes or oppressed classes to have education. This is the biggest conspiracy of the central government.
Sir, social justice ideologues in Tamil Nadu, how they rationalize their opposition to NEET is that, sir, an entrance exam itself, when 12th mark is there, students study for 12th exam. When they get marks, when admission, medical admission can be done based on 12th mark itself. But to put in something called as NEET, it opens a new avenue for coaching centers, and which can only be afforded by, again, elite. They have to spend lakhs. So the another checks and balance for the constitutional educational right. So people in Tamil Nadu, social justice ideologues in specific, they say that if the government's intention, even the Congress government has gotten NEET, if government's intention is to ban the capitational admissions in the college, they can say that there is no private admissions. All the seats in a medical college should be admitted by government counseling. That could have been a very easy. Should they go to
let me tell you how, give an example how we function, how the systems are working. A man from Karnataka filed a PIL in Supreme Court against the capitation fees. Let me tell you, my dear friend, I am ashamed to say not even a single advocate worth his name was there to fight against the capitation fees. Finally, the gentleman had to take the help of the government, advocate to present his case. No advocate worth his name stood against the capitation fees. That's how the system functions. So it is for the common man to fight this maladies in the system, and I'm not surprised when some of the so-called ideologues of the social justice are opposed to NEET. And my point is, we should get opportunity. All the poor and the people who are denied education for centuries, they should be given opportunity through NEET, CET, or whatever the mechanism they have. They should get opportunity to study.
Sir, one last question about NEET, sir. This Modi government, it rationalizes NEET by saying that putting an exam, a competitive exam like NEET in place will take medical education to the standards of IITs and IIMs. Social justice ideologues in Tamil Nadu feel is that the very entrance exam of the IIT and IIMs has made IITs and IIMs for Iyengar and Iyengars, for the Brahmins. So the same thing will happen as well.
You know, people who are anti-reservation, the mindset of the people who are status quoist, they doesn't want other people to study or get educated. They don't mind selling the seats. They doesn't want any talented people to come on their own. That is the biggest drawback we are facing. But we will have to sincerely campaign against this vast conspiracy of the Sangh Parivar, or else our OBC cadres will not realize that they have been used, misused, abused as mercenaries.
But I just want to get one clarity, sir. With regard to NEET, Sangh Parivar is strongly in favor of NEET, but Dravidian movement, including DMK is dead against NEET. Dravidian movement is dead against NEET. That is what is happening in Tamil Nadu.
No, that is because the NEET only helps the people who can afford to take
Yes.
the exams.
Yes.
And the have-nots have no place in the NEET. That's where the Dravidian parties are opposing NEET. We also oppose the NEET. But the government at the helm of affairs, they are hoodwinking the people. That's the point we are making.
I get it, sir. Sir, with regard I want to make note that it is very appreciable of Madam Sonia to strongly take up this OBC representation issue in NEET. She has written a letter to the Prime Minister, and even Madam Priyanka Gandhi has taken up this issue. So it is it is a positive sign that Congress has gotten back to its roots, its OBC roots, its non-Brahmin roots. So it's a development, sir. How do you look at it?
You know, it is not that just yesterday we started giving representation. We had inculcated all these points in the Constitution. The spirit of the Constitution is not implemented with letter and spirit. That is where it took almost 60 years for the people to realize that they can't ignore the vast majority. They should be educated. They should be given a decent employment, decent living. That the Sangh Parivar doesn't believe in that. Whereas Congress believe in overall development, upliftment of the weaker sections especially.
Very true. Sir, as far as this 10% reservation based on economic criteria to the economically weaker sections, sir, when we look at the tradition of social justice legislation, when you look at the tradition of the reservation, we have struggled so hard to establish that reservation should be given based on caste. The rights, the educational and social rights were denied based on caste, so we should give the rights again on the basis of caste. But Modi government has brought in a legislation which gives reservation based on economic criteria, making a joke out of reservation. It makes reservation as a poverty alleviation scheme. Why Congress is not against? Why Congress has not opposed the 10% reservations, sir?
Yes, only RJD and DMK opposed this 10% reservation. This bill has diluted the spirit of the reservation. As rightly pointed by you, the reservation is not a poverty alleviation program. Reservation is only for socially, educationally backward classes. Socially, educationally, people who have been deprived for ages, they should get the reservation. Not the economic criteria was never discussed in the parliament, in the Constituent Assembly. Though it was discussed, finally the conclusion was social and education. Well, we'll have to go with the party line. If you take personal, my opinion, that was a wrong thing to support the 10% reservation.
Okay. That is exactly why we believe that you are a real face in Indian National Congress. Even if it means taking a stand against party line, you don't hesitate to do it as far as social justice is concerned.
Yes, it's my personal opinion because I am in the party. When they take the collective decision, I have to go by that. But there are members within the party also who did not endorse we supporting because now everything in terms of electoral politics, sometimes they compromise. But even if we lose a couple of elections, we should not compromise the spirit of Constitution. This is my opinion.
That's a very a noble point, sir. Sir, can we say that the very reason why these things are happening, Sangh Parivar is able to do this, is able to cut a slack, is able to cut the slice of OBCs and give it to the Brahmins and the upper caste. This is happening because, again, the lack of awareness is on us, the OBCs, the SCs, is that the reason, sir?
Well, you see, the Sangh Parivar has infiltrated among the OBCs and they have been brainwashed against these reservations. And because it's almost 95 years, they have taken, that's how they have taken the route of communal agenda. it's very easy to convince people on in the line of communal ways, because it is very tough job to convince the masses on the social justice business, because it's a vast, this country has got a vast diversity. Convincing them, it takes time, but definitely people will understand the draconian designs of the Sangh Parivar.
Yes. Sir, when you interact, you have definitely interacted with people across the country. When you interact with the masses of the North India and leaders of the North India, do you feel hopeful that this thing is possible? That making them understand the importance of caste conservation is
Well,
possible.
it takes time. It takes time. Slowly, people will realize all these years they have been exploited in the name of religion. Well, it will take little time, but definitely they will realize.
Sir, and recently, Modi government has done a bigger controversy about reservation, because previous step was just confined to NEET PG admission, but now Modi government is contemplating a move which is changing the economic criteria to design creamy layer for the OBC. It is going to take individual salaries into account to
You
determine
know,
the amount for creamy layer.
there
How?
was there was there was a committee constituted by the central government, BJP government, to study this creamy layer. There was not even a single member from the OBCs or the SCs. The man who was heading, that is Mr. Sharma, is totally against the OBCs, SCs, and STs. He is anti-reservationist. That's how he was heading that committee. I know I had interacted with him in my various committees, but he's totally against the OBCs. And this is how the BJP operates under the corporate carpet, under the carpet of the carpet of the OBCs. That's very sad part.
Sir, as a politician who has the strong experience at the ground level, I want to ask you this, sir. By doing so many things against OBCs, against non-Brahmins, against SCs and STs, how BJP is able to present itself as a party of OBCs, as a party of Dalits and SCs? That's how they are winning elections. How is it happening?
That's their role model is Hitler, and their agenda to brainwash the OBCs, SC and STs or the communal agenda. In the name of religion, they have brainwashed the entire Shudra communities and Dalits, and they have been carried away, because once you bring in the religion and the God, naturally people get attention because of the insecurity. The insecurity has created 33 crore god and goddesses in this country. The more the insecurities, more the God. More the insecurity, they depend on the people who propagate the religion.
That's a good one, sir. That's a good one. Sir, regarding Karnataka, sir, since you're a seasoned politician of Karnataka, you've had an illustrious career in Parliament. That's a different story. But you are a seasoned politician of Karnataka. What happened in Karnataka? Where did Karnataka go wrong, sir? As far as Sangh Parivar taking over Karnataka, they ended up capturing one of our states, one of our Dravidian states. How did that happen in Karnataka, sir?
You see, of course, Congress party, as a party, we had to pay a high price for this. We had failed to understand the undercurrent of the Sangh Parivars in Karnataka. You know, the top second, third, fourth leaders in the Sangh Parivar are from Karnataka. They have expanded their base, and somewhere the Sangh Parivar had infiltrated in the Congress party in different levels. That's how they doesn't have a strong stand on the communal agenda. Unless you fight their communal agenda, it is very tough job. I think somewhere we had compromised on this, so we had to pay a price for this.
This is a very strong point you're making, sir. Their infiltration in Congress has costed us.
Yes.
Sir,
right.
now, I just want to ask you what Tamil Nadu can learn, sir, because although the Dravidian movement has been presenting a strong resistance to Sangh Parivar till now, but the war is still going on. They're trying to infiltrate in Tamil Nadu. What lessons Tamil Nadu should learn from Karnataka, sir, according to you?
Well, there is nothing to learn from Karnataka as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned. They
Okay.
should keep the Dravidian movement alive. You see, Mr. Modi and the BJP and the RSS claim that Gujarat is a Gujarat model for the entire nation. It is a bogus model. If at all, if there is any model for the country in terms of, you can just go through the social index, social welfare index. Tamil Nadu stands at the top. And
Yes.
you name the industry that is there in Tamil Nadu. That is not like Gujarat. Gujarat is only the publicity which has created the Gujarat model. But practically, if at all, if you ask me, the role model for the entire country is Tamil Nadu because it's ruled by Kamaraj, it's ruled by Annadurai, it's ruled by Dravidian parties, including Dr. Kalanja. It is a role model for the entire country, and both as a Dravidian states, we should be a role model for the entire nation, so that the other brothers and sisters from the North India, they also come along with us in terms of development, in terms of empowerment.
Beautifully said, sir. I just wish when a senior most parliamentarian from a different state knows so much about Tamil Nadu's achievements, Dravidian Party's achievements. I just wish some of our own brothers, Tamil brothers, they get to listen to this. They get to know about the things that you just mentioned in the past couple of minutes. Sir,
No,
how do you think Dravidian movement can be strengthened in Karnataka, sir? Is there a base?
the mindset of the Kannadigas are the Dravidian movement, but they should be made to understand what exactly the Dravidian movement is. The Baswana's movement is a Dravidian movement,
Right.
but it's been hijacked by the BJP and the Sangh Parivar. And it is the duty of the people who believe in social justice to convince the people about this Dravidian movement. That's all. Nothing else.
So, with regard to this Lingayat
And
movement, yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can go on, sir.
and the infiltration of the Sangh Parivar in Tamil Nadu is a very dangerous trend. I think Dravidian cadres are capable of countering them, and we should fight them tooth and nail.
We just hope so, sir. Sir, with regard to this Lingayat movement, so some of us want clarity about it. What whole movement, and they even are asking for separate religious status. What this whole movement means for Karnataka politics, sir?
Well, there is a lot of debate is going on, and normally in the census, population census, they don't write in the religion column. They don't write Hindus. They write as Veerashaivas. They are the rebellions of this Brahminism in the 12th century. So they are. That's how I said they are the Dravidian. That's the Dravidian movement almost, and that should be made to understand because Periyar Ramaswamy Naikar's movement was very radical one, whereas the Lingayat movement has given a religious movement against the Brahminical forces.
Right, right. Sir, with regard to last question, sir, going forward, what is your take on the impending need to forge a close partnership between all these five major Dravidian states on issues like social justice and federalism? What do you make out of the need for the?
My demand with the central government is they should scrap NEET. Very simple. They should scrap NEET.
And about the need to
Right.
to a close partnership between four states, the five Dravidian states. How do you look at it, sir?
Well, somebody should coordinate it. Like one of my I am the greatest fan of Mr. Veeramani. He coordinates with both the Dravidian parties when it comes to the ideological issue. So my only appeal to the people who propagate these social justice, a tall personality should rather coordinate with these four major states as far as the Dravidian movements are concerned. We need a tall personality who can just coordinate with all these southern states to make the Dravidian movement a strong movement in this country.
Words of wisdom coming from a seasoned politician. Sir, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir, on various topics ranging from national issues to parochial, subnational social issues of the states, of the Dravidian states. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. And on some of the comments that you made, I really wish the brothers from Tamil Nadu get to listen to it and understand the importance of Dravidian movement in Tamil Nadu.
It's on record in Parliament. Twice I have spoken on Tamil Nadu.
Okay.
It's on record.
Sir, can you please give us
record in Rajya Sabha that twice you can go to YouTube, you will get that. I had not only now, way back in 94 also I once had spoken. This time even in 2004 to 2010 I had spoken, and 2014 to 2020 also I have spoken for Tamil Nadu as a role model state.
Beautifully said, sir. A Tamil brother from a Kannadiga mother, we can say. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir.
We are brothers and sisters.
It was an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Best of luck.